Welcome, and thank you for joining us today to launch a new national food loss and waste prevention and reduction cost share program for Canadian food and beverage manufacturers. This program is being delivered by Provision Coalition and the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity and has been generously supported by the Walmart Foundation. I'm Cher Meerweather, Executive Director of Provision Coalition, and it is my pleasure to welcome colleagues here in person and joining us via the live stream from across Canada. In terms of what we want to achieve this afternoon, we will start with Krista Mckay giving a brief overview of the program and the introduction, and then she'll touch on some of the public trust aspects of the program. Then I will come back and give you a very detailed account of what is actually in the program. And then I'm going to pass it over to Bruce Taylor from Enviro Stewards to give us the details on the actual assessments that we'll conduct. And then we'll wrap it up with Hans Dairy providing us with an overview of real-life food waste reduction in action. And then the last part of our day will be an opportunity for questions and answers, as well as an opportunity to sign up for the program. Some of the objectives for the actual session: of course, we want to introduce the Food Loss and Waste Cost Share Program. We want to make sure that you understand all the enrollment requirements for the manufacturers, as well as the specific program details. We'll also take some time to talk about the industry food loss and waste reduction goals from the coalition's perspective, and hopefully we can facilitate some industry action. So now I would like to start by encouraging participants to make this session as interactive as possible. So please feel free to ask questions as we go. And I know that we have the live stream, so we've got Cynthia here. She'll raise her hand and indicate if there's any questions coming through the live stream. But we do want to keep this interactive. Our thanks to Food and Consumer Products of Canada for hosting the launch event here at the organization's corporate head office in Mississauga, Ontario. FCPC is the nonprofit leadership organization for the Canadian food, beverage, and consumer products industry. FCPC is also a valued member of Provision Coalition and a supporter of the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity. I'm pleased now to welcome Michelle Saunders, Vice President of Provincial Affairs and Sustainability with FCPC, to provide a few remarks. Welcome, Michelle.
Thanks, Cher. On behalf of FCPC, I just want to take the opportunity to welcome everyone today for coming in person, and for those participating by the webinar. It's our pleasure to host this event today. So tackling food loss and waste is a key priority for the Canadian food and beverage manufacturing industry, in part because we know that approximately 18% of food waste produced along the Canadian supply chain from farm to consumer occurs at the manufacturer level. As a member of Provision Coalition, FCPC is committed to the industry's food loss and waste prevention and reduction challenge. We've supported the development of online tools such as Provision's Food Loss and Waste Toolkit 2.0 and programs such as the one we're announcing here today, where experts work directly with businesses in identifying food loss and waste and implementing solutions. I do just want to say, when we talk to our members across the country, increasingly we hear concern and frustration from food and beverage manufacturers about an increasing level of regulatory proposals for industry, and that's resulting in increased costs of business. So it is our pleasure to really present to you and to work with partners to be able to identify opportunities to make your jobs a little bit easier, to make your businesses a little more efficient, and to reduce the cost of doing business in Canada. So we're very pleased to partner with Provision Coalition on this. So I just want to thank Provision Coalition and the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity for securing support from the Walmart Foundation and launching this unique program. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm excited to see this program really drive both the prevention and reduction of food waste in manufacturing facilities across Canada. And again, I'm so pleased that so many people were able to join us today for this session. It's now my pleasure to welcome my colleague and delivery partner in the program, Krista Mckay, President of the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity. Krista will provide an overview of the new program, including the food loss and waste public trust research within the Canadian food and beverage industry that will be a key outcome for all of us. Krista.
Thanks, Cher, and good afternoon, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here today. This new program is exciting for all of us in the food system. We're focusing on food manufacturers today, but it was a really exciting opportunity for Provision Coalition to come together with Center for Food Integrity to support the food and beverage and manufacturing industry. I'm going to give you an overview, an introduction to the program, and then I'm going to share some of our aspect of the work on public trust research. So big picture, people in the room, you're here for a reason. You're interested in food loss and waste, so I don't have to go into details of the Canadian challenge of reducing food loss and waste. This infographic demonstrates the complexity of this topic and how important it is to the whole food system, not just within Canada, but obviously globally. So why a food loss and waste reduction program for manufacturers here in Canada? Well, when we think about the call to action to reduce food loss, the first place we think about is our homes. And so that's a big topic and a big target with many millions of Canadians to hit. So the second place we look at is food manufacturers themselves. And so when we think about targeting your companies and your colleagues and then their employees, we thought that is a pretty smart way to hit two target audiences at once. Food processing, packaging, and manufacturing is a lean margin business. I don't have to tell anybody in the room or live stream about that. But Provision Coalition's work has demonstrated that there's a tremendous opportunity to be gained both economically as well as making a difference on your targets and having a great story to share. And finally, the public trust piece is something I'm going to get into a bit more in a minute, but the concept of getting ahead and investing proactively on this topic before it becomes something that you need to react and respond to is always a good idea. Globally, this is a big topic of discussion and a global driver for this program outside of our Canadian borders would be the UN Sustainability Goals. So targeting half food waste and reducing food loss by 2020. And, we hear big announcements of targets, et cetera, and global goals. And so with our teams at Provision and Center for Food Integrity saying, what can we do to help Canada's food and beverage system come together to act and achieve some of these measures? And as we go through the program today, you'll see there is definitely a strong business case for change. While we think about social ethics, values, and public trust in the big picture, there is definitely evidence showing that every dollar invested in preventing food waste can return up to $14. And some of the case studies that we'll share, one today and others through the program, will help demonstrate that with good financial returns. The program overview that we'll be going through today will include understanding a little bit about the program itself, the audit and assessment piece, the case studies and how the data will be shared and benefit the whole food system. And I will touch a bit on the public trust research piece and the public trust component. And I think just the importance of framing this up to talk about food loss and waste, not just today, but where we need to be when we think about the 2030 targets and the different pressures on the food system. So if we think about things like waste disposal regulations, as an example, with their changes in different provinces, the pressure and the demands on the food system with waste loss and disposal. If we just look at that one piece alone, saying, you know what, here's an opportunity to manage this risk proactively and own it and make your own solutions before a regulation dictates that you need to. And as Cher mentioned, we're really excited to be part of a new program that will be announced more formally in April that we're sharing with you today as a bigger piece of what the Walmart Foundation is doing. And it's important to note that this is charitable work. So Center for Food Integrity is a charity. Walmart Foundation is a North American charity. And you think, well, we're business-minded people. Why is this charitable? If you were just doing this as a business-minded program, you would work with perhaps Cher and Bruce's group and do your own food loss and waste assessment, keep all the data to yourself and not share it with anybody. The fact that we're going to be sharing case studies, aggregate data, benchmarking, and setting the whole food system up to share this information is part of our charitable means. And I'll share a little bit more about that in a minute. So I'm going to touch on the public trust component of this program before we get into the details of your specific role in it. And Center for Food Integrity was created in 2016. We're new in Canada with a mission to help the food system earn trust. And as I was sharing with my new colleague Anthony back here, we were created in just a year and a half ago in Canada, but with an American affiliate that was created back in 2007 to say this is a global conversation about trust in food, and it's happening in the US and it's definitely happening here in Canada. We need a North American perspective, and we need to equip our food system to do better together from farm to fork. So from individual farmers right through to the biggest food companies in the country. And an example of some of our members, funders, and supporters, we are a charity, so we have individual donors, we have program supporters, and we have company members. So when you look at our annual report and you say, who do you represent? Exactly. Anybody with an interest in credible information and advancing public trust in food. So it's a really unique model in that it's we don't advocate for companies or positions, we advocate for credible information and to equip the food system to do a better job to earn trust. So this program is a perfect fit for our mandate together with provision to say, you know what, we can do better together if we put together programs like this. And all of you wear different hats in the room in terms of who you represent and the sectors you work in and the companies that you represent. But in the big picture, this is a conversation about everything on your plate, or as I like to say, my produce drawer is the drawer of good intentions. Well, you know, the stuff that didn't make it to your plate is what we're actually going to be talking about in this program. And so when we think about food loss and waste and how it relates to trust, if we think about your public trust report card and what you talk about with your social responsibility and sustainability report card, what can you do better at? And your company's commitments to programs like this will demonstrate what you're working on that's measurable. Because when we ask the public in our research who's responsible for transparency, the answer is the whole food system, some a little bit more than others. And you'll see food companies, food processors and manufacturers were at the top of the list in terms of who Canadian consumers expect transparency from about their food and how it's produced here in Canada. And this is our 2017 data with this reference. What is the public looking for? You know, we say transparency is no longer optional, right? A radical transparency is the new norm. You should be able to Google anything about what's on your plate. The public, we specifically dove into what the public is expecting from food companies. Our public trust research showed the lowest level of trust in food companies and the highest level of responsibility. That is not a great place to be. Low trust, high responsibility. How do you bridge the gap? So our 2017 research looked at transparency specifically, and they're looking for things like third-party audits, so somebody else saying you're doing a good job or where you need to improve, your track record, what are you actually doing over many years, your practices, what are you doing today, and your policies, which would show your company commitment to things like shared values and the commitments like that UN sustainability goal that I talked about. So this one is specifically around food safety, but I can show you every other topic, including environment, animal welfare, nutrition. They look very similar to these big four pieces, which this program will help you on all four accounts. So what are we going to do in this project specifically related to public trust and related to food loss and waste? We're going to do a few things that'll be helpful to many. The first place we'll be spending our time is asking the public, asking the consumers specifically around food loss and waste. What are your concerns? What are your expectations? As a bit of a benchmark. So then in 5 years from now, we'll go back and say, okay, what did we do to move the bar and address concerns and reduce the gap between expectations and reality? We'll also be talking to you, the food companies that are part of this program, and I'll explain a little bit about that in a minute. We'll be providing some shared resources through a site that I'll be introducing you to today called Best Food Facts, and we'll be creating dialogue. So although the program is focusing on food manufacturers, we'll be sharing the case studies up and down the supply chain. So your customers and your suppliers, one up, one down, two up, two down, up and down the supply chain should know the good news story about what your commitment to food loss and waste is through this program. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about the consumer side, you can see our public trust research reports on foodintegrity.ca. 2016 was the base model on what it takes to earn trust with Canadians, and 2017 that I referenced is specifically around transparency and food companies. So I encourage you to take a look at those. With the thinking being, including for this program, we need to begin with the end in mind. What's the person that's buying your product? What's on their plate? What's on their mind? Let's make sure we're timely and topical with what Canadians are interested in. This is from our 2016 and 2017 data, one of our trending questions, and we have some of these questions that actually go back to 2006, which is really valuable. This public trust game is a long-term game plan. This is not a quarterly return on investment. It's a long game, and this is just an example of what's the top overall concerns for Canadians. So this was out of a long shopping list of about 30 things. You'll note here, rising cost of food and keeping healthy food affordable, top 2 concerns for Canadians over healthcare, energy, and economy. Those are kind of big deal items. I don't know if you've heard of them. So when you think about how this food loss and waste project fits into this, there's a really great fit that your commitment to reducing food loss and waste, their commitment to reducing food loss and waste at home will help keep healthy food affordable, right? So you need to just, this is part of your, this is on the exam, as I always like to say, to make sure people are paying attention. This is a really important piece. And this is the second year in a row that we've seen those top 2 issues. So we'll be in the field this summer talking to Canadians in a bunch of different ways, including their online behavior, to see what they're actually doing and saying online versus what they might say in a survey. And we'll be sharing this release of this information in November. November 13th and 14th will be our CCFI Public Trust Summit in Gatineau, just over the river from Ottawa. And so there'll be a public news release as well as an event called our Public Trust Summit, which we would love for you to join us there. So stay tuned. We'll be finding out what consumers think in November more publicly. And then what about you? What about the food manufacturers? What do you think? So part of our job in helping the food system earn trust and tackling food loss and waste is to get some base data on what our target audience actually thinks. So business risks and opportunities and thinking around food loss and waste and amidst your bigger sustainability goals. Also, your thoughts on public trust, risk and opportunities, investments. Is this a nice to do? Is it a need to do? How big of a priority is it to you today and 5 years from now? And comparing, which I always find really interesting, the gaps and disconnects between what food companies identify as important and what consumers identify as important. And I put the big question mark sign up here because I have no preconceived idea what those gaps might be, but I guarantee you there will be gaps. So our team will work on analyzing the gaps and disconnects between where the food companies are and where maybe you might need to be and where the consumers expect you to be. And there's only 2 ways you'll shift that gap. Either production practices need to shift over to consumer expectations, or you inform consumers as to why you're doing the right thing for the right reasons. So stay tuned. We'll be analyzing that work through this project as well. So as part of your commitment to this program, you'll be completing some of this public trust research for us. And last but not least is, how do we share this information publicly? The US CFI created this resource called Best Food Facts. It's based around a website, but it's a whole online resource center that goes across all social media channels, which is fun. And what it does, it actually takes what our public trust research shows, who the credible experts are, and gives them a voice. So when we ask who's a credible expert on nutrition, we hear things like dietitians and university researchers, nutrition research as an example. Well, when you Google search a food topic, chances are you're not finding the credible information you're looking for. So this resource is designed to provide a home for credible voices to provide answers. So there's already about 500 questions on there right now, but with this program, we're really excited that we'll be able to populate it with food loss and waste specific content and Canadian experts. So we'll take what the Canadian consumers tell us their interests are, and or maybe where there's a gap between what they think and what reality is, and we'll populate this resource. And the magic thing about this resource is it's meant to be shared up and down the supply chain. So any of your competitors, your colleagues, your customers, your suppliers can all use the same resource. So you put your own banner on it. Thank you, Consumer ABC, for asking this question. And then here is here's some credible resources on what you need to know about that topic. So we present best food facts to Canadian food manufacturers really as a gift, I would consider, as credible content that has been tested and proven with consumers. And we'll do some more of this summer with this program to help populate it with more Canadian content, Canadian experts. And then we'll be encouraging the program participants to use it not just for your own benefit, but an interesting angle to this program is how do you promote it even just with your own employees? So having a lunch and learn, for example, with no food waste allowed, obviously, and you present this resource and you just say, here's a really awesome resource. Just think about it. You can ask a leading expert in North America any question about what's on your plate, how it was grown, how it got there, nutrition, how the animal was treated, the food loss and waste component. It's a pretty powerful resource. You can share it with your own employees that they can then take home, obviously, which is one consumer piece. So that's our public trust component, the big picture as a public trust risk issue, which as I'm a hockey player, so I'll tell you, it's always better to play offense than defense. And we look at these trends from the EU to the US to Canada, and we feel we're in a really good position when it comes to public trust and the big picture when it comes to our food. So why not take the proverbial bull by the horns, be proactive, become part of the program, and get the shared benefit with all of your colleagues across the food system. Thank you.
Thank you, Krystle. What a great overview, a big picture perspective on our program, and also on the aspects of the public trust, which is somewhat unique to food loss and waste. And so we're excited about being able to use those two pieces. What I'm going to do now is move into the description of the actual program for food and beverage manufacturers and processors. I do want to touch on who Provision Coalition is, so you have a sense of who we are if you aren't familiar with us. And then I'm going to talk about some of the root causes of food loss and waste in manufacturing that came out of some of our foundational research, and really how that has guided our program design. And then I'll touch on the specifics within the actual cost share program, what you can expect to see in the focused food loss and waste assessment. And of course, Bruce will give a more detailed perspective on that as well. And then also how we're going to utilize the tools within our sustainability management system to support you with your reduction efforts. So for those who are not familiar with Provision Coalition, we're a coalition of 16 industry associations. And we were created by industry for industry, and the industry has given us a purpose of making food sustainably. We are national in scope, and you can see the 16 member associations. And in terms of what we actually do, we're focused on facilitating economic growth and resiliency within the food and beverage manufacturing sector. We do this through 3 strategic pillars. Our first is our sustainability management system. So all of the online tools and resources that we've created, I'm going to show you a couple of them today that we'll use in the program, as well as our on-site programs where we work one-on-one with the food companies. Our second strategic priority is our value chain collaboration, and that's working on the mega challenges that face our industry that we believe cannot be addressed in isolation, that we have to work collaboratively with the entire value chain. And so we've identified 3 areas, food loss and waste being one of them, climate change mitigation, and responsible sourcing, that transparency within the supply chain that Krystle was talking about. And our third strategic priority is knowledge transfer, translation, and outreach. And in essence, what that means is sharing what we learn as we go, making sure that the industry is aware of all the opportunities. In terms of our food loss and waste goals, the coalition came together in 2016 and said that we need to do something as a coalition. And so this program is really our first effort towards the Sustainable Development Goals and Target 12.3. And so what the coalition has said is that we want to create a baseline of what's happening in Canada, put some rigor behind that data, and then really start to look at, can we achieve a 20% reduction to start, and then we'll align ourselves to that larger global initiative of a 50% reduction by 2030. We also want to make sure that the tools that we have available are being utilized by the industry. We've got some wonderful results from them, and they are available to all food and beverage companies across the country. Some of the outcome impacts that we're looking to do is have a look at the aggregate data. We want to first understand, again, that baseline. So how much food waste is happening in processing and manufacturing? And then we want to be able to tell the positive story. So through our programs and our interaction with industry, how much food loss and waste have we saved? And with that, the correlating energy and the water and the greenhouse gas emissions, the calories, can we tell a positive story about this is what industry has done to not only reduce and prevent it, but actually save it? And so we want to be able to tell that story about the percentage food loss and waste that has been reduced and what we've put back into the economy. So in terms of the specific details, this is, I'm sure, why you're sitting in the room or listening via live stream. When we started our journey in 2013, we did some foundational research, which was really mapping the food loss and waste issue in Canada. And we found 5 major issues, or the root causes of food loss and waste. The first being human behavior and the incentives behind it. The second is the time-limited biological reality of food. The third was the limitation of technology or a lack of advanced technology, equipment, and packaging. The fourth was risk perception and risk avoidance. So this has to do with the food safety aspects of food. And then the unintended consequences of regulation. Sometimes our tough food safety regs get in the way of reducing food waste or having to deal with it in a different way. And within those root causes, we were able to identify some very specific challenges and also, the flip side of that, the opportunities. The first was the processor or manufacturer flagged to us, well, the ability to quantify and track our progress. That's a challenge. We don't necessarily have the tools. The awareness that there's a problem. I don't have any food waste in my facility. I divert it all. Well, the fact that you're diverting it means you have food loss and waste in the first place. And then that mindset shift and the behavior change aspect. Doing your business differently can be very challenging. And then access to innovative solutions. And so when we were putting together the program design, we looked at these 4 components very seriously, and you'll see that we touch on all 4 of these in our program design. So what we intend to do is 50 food loss and waste prevention assessments for processors and manufacturers. You can be anywhere in Canada. You can be any size organization in terms of the number of employees at your facility, and it's by a single facility. And you can be in any subsector of the food and beverage manufacturing industry. We will ask that you use our sustainability management system, and specifically the food loss and waste toolkit and the key performance indicator dashboard. And I'll show you both of those this afternoon. You will be asked to do a Canadian public trust risk assessment that Krystle talked about. And then we will do an employee awareness session specific to food waste, where we will talk about the impact of food waste not only in the facility, but in their home, and we'll leverage the best food facts as well. And we will do that either on-site or via digital, depending on where you're located in Canada. In terms of the focused food loss and waste prevention assessment, we've partnered with Enviro Stewards, and we've set it up so that you can do it in a couple of different ways. The first, or sort of the guaranteed assessment, if you will, is to identify 3 food loss and waste focus areas that will be analyzed. So you get to choose the areas where you think that you have problems in, and we will do a detailed analysis of those 3 areas. And then we will cost share against that assessment valued at $10,000. But we also recognize that there is real opportunity in the fact that we've got the team there. And so if you want to do a much more detailed assessment where you go beyond just the 3 focus areas, or maybe you want to leverage some of the other utility fundings, we're going to allow that to happen as well. And Bruce will explain some of those specific details. But the point is that we're going to do a minimum of 3, and the sky's the limit for you. We'll also utilize our food loss and waste toolkit and the dashboard, as I mentioned, and it will be available in both English and French, and we will provide a complete demonstration of the whole system so that you understand how to engage with the tools. I want to show you now the 2 specific tools for this program. The food loss and waste toolkit was really about quantifying in that first part of the opportunities and challenge slide that I showed you. It's about quantification, because we know that if you can't measure it, then you can't manage it or improve it. And so when we set out to develop the Food Loss and Waste Toolkit in 2016, it was really about quantifying the food that's wasted in the facility and identifying the root causes and solutions. And then we wanted to be able to give sort of that net impact or the payback or economic aspects of the tool. We've since done an enhancement to the tool. It's just about to launch. And it now looks at the environmental and the social aspects. And so the tool will give you an output in terms of the environmental impact, looking at how much energy, how much water, the greenhouse gas that is embedded in that food that's wasted. It'll also show you the social impact. So it'll calculate the calories of that food that's wasted, as well as conversion into meals. So you can get truly a holistic perspective and make an informed business decision about what projects you should tackle first. And what is really important is that we are now aligned to the Food Loss and Waste Protocol, which is the global standard on how you measure food loss and waste. A couple of screenshots for you, and I know that this is fairly small, but in essence what I want to share with you is that as you work your way through the toolkit, and Bruce and his team will do most of this for you, but you'll learn how to use the tool for future use, is it shows you what your reduction opportunities are, as well as your environmental opportunities. Then it'll show you the impact from a life cycle perspective. So in terms of your food waste, is the majority of the impact happening in your raw materials? Is it happening in your production, or is it happening at the waste end? And then it'll give you some visuals in terms of the value of the avoidable waste, the energy and natural gas, the carbon emissions, as well as the water in various graphic forms. And then it'll give you a summary of your root causes and your potential solutions. And then it'll give you the economic breakdown in terms of what are your best options. And you can toggle back and forth based on the various variables. Do you want to look at it low capital? Do you want to look at it from a net present value or highest or lowest priority? And you get to assign that. And then, of course, along the bottom, it gives you, again, a recap of the environmental and social aspects of the opportunities. The other tool that we're going to use within the system in this program is our Key Performance Indicator dashboard. And this focuses on 4 main aspects that we think every business should have in their indicators. And that is operational excellence, people, products, and partners. And so what we've done is we've put together 14 indicators that we think every business should be using, ranging from environmental, social, and economic. And we will specifically use the waste indicator in this program. You're welcome to use all of them, but we'll focus in on these in particular. And what we'll encourage you to do is to actually set a target within the system and then track against how you're doing against that target. So this is a screenshot again of how you engage with the system. You put the data into the system, you can upload the data or manually enter it, and then it'll give you a graphic representation of how you are doing against time and against that target. The Key Performance Indicator dashboard will be offered to all the participants at no cost during the program, and this is valued at $135 a month, so it's a great opportunity to leverage a fantastic software system that was developed by Metrio. In terms of the specifics, once Enviro Stewards has gone on site and completed the actual food loss and waste assessment, and we've leveraged the toolkit, what you will receive is an action plan. So it'll quantify the total food loss and waste in tons that's happening in your facility. It'll give you that dollar value, the economic and social impact of that food that's wasted. And then it'll present to you some solutions on how to actually reduce the food loss and waste at source. And then that's where we will encourage you to set some targets against those opportunities and use the Key Performance Indicator dashboard to track progress. In terms of the specific manufacturer requirements, we do ask that you will sign a memorandum of understanding with us provision. And the MOU essentially states that you promise to complete the project before January 3rd, 2019. That's our drop dead date from the Walmart Foundation, and so that's a really important piece for us. If you withdraw before you complete the program, there is a clause in the MOU that says that you will be obligated to pay the true value of the invested time at your facility so that we don't lose that funding and we're able to work with another company to complete our 50 food loss and waste assessments. You will be asked to make a financial contribution to the program, and that contribution will be anywhere from a 15 to 50% contribution depending on the number of employees at the facility that is engaging. So for example, the $10,000 assessment, if you are a micro or small, so you have 0 to 25 employees, we'll offer you an 85% cost share. And so you would contribute $1,500 to the program. We have a limit to the number of facilities in each of the categories. And so in this case, it is 2 facilities that can participate. In the small, 26 to 100, small to medium-ish, you will contribute 25% and we will contribute 75%, so you'll pay $2,500. And we have 6 spots available in that category. The 101 to 499, you will contribute 40%, we will contribute 60%, and so it's a $4,000 contribution from the manufacturer. We have 32 spots in that category. And then for the very large facilities, 500 plus employees at the single site, it'll be a 50% cost share at a $5,000 contribution, and we've got 10 spots in that category. But what we want to make sure doesn't happen is that if you are interested in a particular category and it happens to be full, we don't want to turn you away. So we'll simply say the next category that has available spots, you can pay at that contribution. So for example, if a micro or a small really wanted to engage with the program, but there were no spots left, they could go into the 26 to 100 and pay the $2,500 to be part of the program. You will also be required as a manufacturer or processor to complete a background information questionnaire to help us to establish that baseline about what's happening in the industry from a food loss and waste perspective. You'll be required to complete that public trust risk assessment questionnaire, and then allowing us to actually do the employee education and awareness session. If you haven't already registered in the sustainability management system, we will ask that you register in the system and that you review the food loss and waste toolkit and all of the data that's been inputted by Enviro Stewards, and that you input data into the key performance indicator dashboard and set some targets. We do ask that from a data sharing perspective, you give us permission to see your data. We will keep it all very confidential. We'll sign an NDA if you ask. And really what's important is that in aggregate, we will aggregate all of the data from the program participants in order to tell that story about what's happening in our industry. There will be opportunities to participate in case studies for those that had really exciting results and you want to tell a positive story. We will engage with up to 5 case studies, and so you can engage with us in that area. And then we do ask that you complete a program evaluation so that we can leverage that evaluation to perhaps do bigger and more programs or learn and make it better. Some of our program goals and objectives. We want to make sure that we understand how effective our tools are. And so we'll first translate all of the tools, make them available in both English and French. We are going to be collecting a lot of the best practices as we go over the next year. And so what you'll see at the end of the program is an addition of best practices into the food loss and waste toolkit. And then again, feedback on the actual assessments and the tools that you use so that we can continuously improve both of those. We also want to make sure that we're doing lots of outreach. Krystle talked a lot about that from the best food facts, but also in terms of our case study development and sharing that up and down the value chain. And then we also want to solicit interest for those who are really engaged in this space to become part of our food loss and waste stakeholder collaborative. We've had the collaborative in place since 2014, and it's a really great opportunity to direct the work that we're doing, but also a large scale across the country. So we are aligned with the National Zero Waste Council on some of their strategy work. The collaborative was responsible for the solutions forum that we did last spring. So a fairly influential group. And then we have a target manufacturing group that helps us decide what should we do next in this space. So in summary, in terms of the specific next steps, I'll go through this again at the end also, but in essence, what we're looking is that you confirm your interests today. So give us your name, your company, and the number of employees. And then from there, you'll have an opportunity to sign the MOU. And it'll be on a first come, first spot secured basis. And so what we'll do is from the moment that you receive the MOU, you'll have 2 weeks. If you were at the event or in the live stream today, you'll have 2 weeks where we will hold that spot for you. And you can review the MOU, get all of the necessary approvals, and then we'll proceed from there. Should you sign the MOU, which we hope you will, then you can select your food loss and waste assessment option. And again, as I said, Bruce will go through those details, and we guarantee that you'll get the focused prevention assessment as a minimum, which those the three key assessments. It looks like we have a question from the live stream, so go ahead, Cynthia.
This is from Nathan Warcanton, Ontario Greenhouse. He is asking, what is considered processors and manufacturers? Are there NAICS restrictions? Is washing, packing fresh produce considered processing manufacturing for this program?
Yes. Easy answer.
And
Yes. So packaging, processing, manufacturing, you'll see in the MOU, it actually defines those three specific categories in the NAICS codes associated with it. But yes, they would be eligible. Mckay Foods, as an example, is a company that we work with on a regular basis. They're a greenhouse where they pack all of their fresh produce. Lots of fresh produce companies work and engage with us. So absolutely. Thank you for the question. And then in terms, again, going back to sort of the summary, you'll complete your backgrounder, your public trust risk assessment questionnaires, conduct the employee engagement session, think about whether or not you want to be part of the case studies, and do the evaluation. So what I'd like to do now is take a quick opportunity for any other questions before I pass it to Bruce. Any burning questions? So I'd like to now introduce Bruce Taylor, President of Enviro Stewards, and he's going to take you through the details of the actual assessments, what's going to happen in your facility, but also show you some of the great examples of work that we've done in the past. Bruce.
Thank you, Cher. Thank you for everybody attending. Appreciate your interest in this important topic. I'm going to go through kind of what's involved with the focused assessments, and then I'll just touch on what would be involved if you do more of the enhanced version and what's that about. And there's some case studies associated with each of those. So later on at 2:15, Keaton from Hans Dairy is going to go through the case study for a focused assessment that was completed at their facility, so I won't bother with going through that. But I'll go through some case studies on the other types. Enviro Stewards, an engineering company in Elmira, but we do work around North America. Our focus is helping facilities improve their margins, primarily with costs that are outside of their walls: energy, water, food waste, ingredient costs, and then reinvesting that. We have development projects in Africa. Relevant awards, so the UN gave us their Sustainable Development Goal Award for Canada. B-Lab selected us as one of the best companies for the world. And our project, together with Provision and Campbell Soup, was selected as the top project of the year by Clean 50 for 2018. So it shows how topical food waste prevention is. Cher mentioned mindsets and awareness. This is probably the biggest nut to crack. Is we did a workshop in the fall, I think it was, and I asked people in the audience, does anybody have a loonie? And somebody would give me a loonie and I'd give them a dime back. I said, does anybody else got a loonie? And they went on for a few, but pretty soon people figured out that this wasn't actually that good a deal. And this is what is happening to our entire food and beverage industry. So we did one of the bakeries in Alberta, and he was so excited because his product returns he was sending to a farmer, and he was getting 10 cents a kilogram. Okay, well, how much did it cost you to make this bread? $1, right? Because we're comparing it to how much does it cost to destroy this food. We're not comparing it to what was the value just before we lost it. And the gap is very large, several orders of magnitude often. And to illustrate that, so most people think of food waste as it's a $70 a ton to send it to landfill, it's $80 to compost it, and $100 to waste energy. No. How much was it worth just before you lost it? 1,000 a ton, 2,000. If it's mozzarella cheese, it's 8,000 a ton. That's the number you should be working with. And our whole society is built on how do we destroy this food as effectively as possible. And our engineering profession is designed around that. How do we make biogas, make energy out of that? But not how do we keep it as food in the first place. And the value is so great to this that I'll show you. Here's an example from Campbell Soup. So you're making the chunky soup. You put in the expensive bits, the chicken, the beef, the pasta, the veggies. Goes along, they check the weight, then they put broth in. So at the end of every run, you run out of broth, so you stop. And you've got some stuff left on the belts. So between that and some other things, there was 13 tons per year of meat being lost. Now, that looks like $100 a ton to send it to the waste energy plant, times 13, that's $1,300 a year. Why are we even talking about this? Well, we're talking about it because it's actually $10,000 a ton to buy the chicken, plus $100 to destroy it. So it's $130,000. Now for $130,000, is it worth talking about? Yes. So this is the problem, is it's in the wrong spot on the accounting because most of it, it's an environmental cost of how do we destroy this? Whether it's your pumping out your interceptors, it's how much does it cost to pump out this interceptor, not how much ingredients are we paying this guy to destroy, right? So by doing this, shifting the economics, we can raise the priority level by several orders of magnitude within your facility. Here's the hierarchy. You know, reduction is always the top, but all the emphasis is actually put on the bottom. So Cher mentioned the food loss tracking. Here's what we're talking about. So when we do our assessments, the very first thing in this background information is, can you fill out this column for us? Where is your food going now, right? And then our role is, given that's the baseline, how do we reduce that? Okay, so our role is food waste prevention assessment. We're actually selling change. So we have a streamlined system here to bring about that change. So who, what, why, where, when, how, we call it. So who, nobody likes change. I have a 2-year-old daughter. She doesn't even like when I change her diapers, right? But people don't like change when they don't know it's coming. So who's going to have a problem later on? It's going to be the quality manager, maintenance, engineering, plant management. Let's get them in the room at the beginning, at the kickoff, so everybody knows what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it. Then we go off and do our work, right? Then what? So where's it going now? So if it's food waste assessment, we just literally measure it as it falls off the line or as it hits the drain or wherever it's going. What was it worth just before it hit the floor? I know it's on the floor, it's garbage, we can't do anything with it. What was it worth just before it hit the floor? Assign that value to it, okay? Go through the whole plant. If we're also doing the other things, then we would put amp loggers on and water clamp on meters, get minute by minute for a week of where's all your utilities going. Then prioritize. So to the left of that chart might be your top food losses or energy or water, whatever it is. Let's focus on those. Forget the ones on the right for now. If we get a 10% improvement on the left, it's better than eliminating 3 of the small ones, right? So we're going to focus our attention where it can make the most good. And so hopefully those 3 for the focus assessment are going to be towards the left of this chart, right? Then why? So for example, here's a plant in Alberta or Manitoba. And doing my walkthrough and, oh, there's 22 liters a minute of boiling water going down the drain right here, constantly. Oh, why is that? Well, we're processing lard. And that centrifuge in the top there, every minute it burps out lard and a little bit of solids and goes down the drain. If we don't put this boiling water down the drain, it's going to solidify in the drain, flood out the whole factory. Okay, well, that's a good reason. But why is the lard going down the drain, right? We heat trace that tank, reprocess that lard, sell the lard. You get to sell 1,200 liters a day of lard. Now you don't need the water. Now you don't need to boil the water. It doesn't get down to your treatment plant. You don't have to react it with chemicals. You don't have to float it out with your DAF. And you don't have to pay somebody to destroy the lard that you should be selling. So the further upstream we can address your problem, the better the benefit is. Then we get that team back together again. So you've had maybe an hour and a half commitment at the beginning with your team. Now we get them together for another hour and we go through, here's what we're thinking recommending. Oh, that won't work. Well, how about like this? Well, yeah, maybe like that. We get that team to agree on a dozen ideas, or 5 or 3 or whatever it is. Then we go do the economics on those. So when you get your report, you've already agreed in principle to every idea in there. The only thing new is the economics. The average economic is well under 1 year, right? So then it gets on the list. We then go do the economics. What's the installed capital? What's the payback, business case, that kind of thing. then how do we get it implemented, right? So we'll develop an action plan for what we suggest, and if you want help, we can help with anything you need on the implementation step, and you want to track before and after kind of thing. So the focus assessments, again, Keaton's going to give you a real-life example, but we're going to go through, you're going to help us select 3 areas to focus on for that focus assessment that can be done within the budget that's allocated. We're going to go collect the data, we're going to enter those into the online toolkit, and we're going to prepare you a report and action plan from that. Okay. If you want a larger version, say like Campbell Soup in Toronto here, it's a much larger facility. So we looked at the entire facility for them. And so, for this example, maybe up to 9 focus areas we might look at. Similar approach. We look at the opportunities, you just get a bigger opportunity because it's actually the opportunity you need to look at, not the cost of doing it. Because the opportunities, in their case, so Campbell Soup, $706,000 a year with a payback of 6 months, right? And it avoids 4,000 tons of greenhouse gas. So the interesting thing is they were already doing what was considered to be the most environmentally responsible thing you can do. You're making energy out of this food waste. But by keeping it as food, you're actually preserving 4,000 tons per year of greenhouse gas that was embedded in that food. So it's actually better off to do it that way, right? Similarly, so CIBL and Biblos in Alberta, we accessed other programs for energy and water conservation, and then we argued to the programs by saving food, we're actually saving embedded water and energy that we put into that product before we lost it. So we're able to do a larger food waste assessment because we're also doing water and energy, right? So it's another way to leverage that kind of thing, and so those were examples there. So here's, so these are hot dog buns, and so 3.5% of all the buns, this is at the front of the line where the guy's putting these trays in. He's going to put the dough in and put it in the oven. And oh, there's a bun there from last time. So this poor guy, he's got a spatula there. He's trying to get this out as fast as he can, get the dough in there, get it back in the oven. Okay, well, let's take a step back. Why is it there in the first place? Well, it's sticking to the pan. Well, maybe the glazing is going in that spot. If the glazing is going in that spot and you put more dough and put it in the same oven, what's going to happen? It's going to stick again. So there's no point putting this through and through and through and through. This guy at the front, when you see one like that, don't even just put it aside. And we're going to send it out for reglazing. We're going to give you some extra ones, you put that one in. So you go back, you find the root cause, and then you find how do you solve that root cause differently. Am I going the right way? Here, so they're making bread, they got big ball of bread. Some of them were going around the top and falling off right on the floor. Okay, well, why? Well, there's not enough flour on the belt so that it's sticking to the belt long enough that it comes over and falls off. Okay, if that's the case, in the longer term, we're going to work at how we're distributing that flour on the belt. But in the short term, let's at least put a pan there, a sanitized pan, so we can rework that. $10,000 a year worth of bread, 0.01 year payback. So interesting, 0.01, right? The longer you talk about this opportunity, the more money you lose, right? That particular facility, we're doing energy also. When we put our temperature loggers on their stack, it takes about an hour for that oven to warm up, but then it was sitting there for another 2 hours before they actually put any bread through it. Because you come in first thing in the morning, you turn everything on. Okay, well, if that's the case, why don't we turn this thing on at 9 o'clock or whatever it works out to, right? Wrong way. So in their particular case, $196,000 a year. Now this is a small bakery. How much bread do you have to make that much profit? So the interesting thing is if you sell a pound of another loaf of bread, you might make 5 cents. If you save $1, you get $1, right? And so this is the best way to improve margin. So that was their numbers. Here's Biblos Bakery. So they're making bagels in this case, and so they're dumping the sesame seeds on, but a lot of it is missing the bagels. Well, let's just redesign that so it lands on the bagel, right? Or that picture there, those are called baseball bagels. There's no hole left in them, and their customer wouldn't buy them from them, right? They said, no, it's got to look like this. I like them better because the cream cheese stays there. But anyway, this is a problem at the inspection station. Somebody's at the inspection station, oh, this is bad. Okay, this one's bad. This one's bad. But it's not a problem at the inspection station. It's a problem back where they're mixing the dough in the first place. So the guy mixing the dough is actually too conscientious. He's making up too far ahead. So it's rising too much by the time it gets to the oven, and you got no hole. So then we give him a light. Make another batch now. Make a batch now, right? So you get back to what's the root problem. The answers then become easy, but it's finding the root problem and finding that it's worthwhile looking at. So in their case, $25,000 a year, immediate payback. And then there's implementation support if you like. So you see the paybacks are so fast that the longer you wait to implement, the more money you lose, right? Often the paybacks are under a month. So the amount of time you're waiting to implement it, you could have it done and you could be saving. So Tim Hortons, for example, they're putting 1,000 kilograms a day of organics down the drain. Town of Halton saying you can't put this much, we can't handle it. You need a treatment plant, which as a chemical engineer, I can make for them. Give me $1 million and all your property, and I'm going to build you an aerobic biological plant to destroy these. Or let me look in your factory and find out where this organic is coming from. Even though the production increased by 2/3, the actual mass of BOD dropped by 80%. So we never built them a treatment plant. And then between energy, water, waste, whatnot, $490,000 a year additional profit with a 5-month payback. They took 1% of what we saved them, they sponsored 40 filters in Africa, and then they put it on their website every year kind of thing. And so I'm open to questions. Yep.
Okay. Is the microphone on? We can ask. The question is, does the consultant provide an action plan or only baseline assessment?
Yep. So the question is, does the consultant provide an action plan? Yes, we will. When you get your report, you'll have these ideas that were vetted with your own team. It'll have the business case with them. It'll have the paybacks. We'll also enter all that into the online toolkit, so you have the other metrics of how much greenhouse gas, how many meals, that kind of thing. And you'll have our recommendation on where to start, but you can proceed how you like. Yep.
And there's another question, and this might be for share. The participant would like a copy. They want to get a copy of current and previous slide decks as well as everyone's contact information, the speaker's contact information.
So all of the materials that we present here today will actually go out as a package for anybody who is registered here today and via live stream. So you will have a complete set of the slides as well as all of our contact information. Absolutely. Any other questions?
I just want to note, I think there's a little bit of a delay, so we might get a couple more in a bit, but I'll let everyone know.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Bruce. I think really gives us a nice perspective on how the work will be conducted with the manufacturers in the facility. What I'm going to do now is introduce Keaton Kohli from Hans Dairy, which we're really pleased that they could come and share with us the real world example of the program that we've described to you today is what they did at their facility. So Hans Dairy was founded in 1997 and is located in Scarborough, Ontario. They're one of the largest Ontario businesses specializing in Asian dairy products. And I'm sure you're all familiar with their exceptional products: yogurt, smoothies, lassi, milk, butter, and dairy desserts. We have asked Keaton to join us today to talk about the Hans Dairy experience with completing a food loss and waste assessment. And Hans Dairy worked with Enviro Stewards, used provisions, tools, and implemented a food loss and waste reduction plan at their Mississauga facility. I see we've got another question from the live stream, so we'll do that question and then we'll get you to come up.
Thank you. Does the company have to pay for implementation separately?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, so the implementation, so the cost share is on the actual assessment and all of the pieces that we described in terms of the employee engagement and the public trust. That's a very good point. And so one of the tools in our sustainability management system is a funding database. And so we will leverage that funding database to try and identify funding available for the actual implementation. Remember that we want you to set a target and use the key performance indicator dashboard to track your progress. So provision can support on the implementation side as well. And that part would not cost anything, but the actual implementation of a project would. Okay. Any other questions before I pass the mic to Keaton? Wonderful.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Keaton Kohli. I'm the lead at manufacturing engineering at Hans Dairy. I know why I'm here today. I know we're all here today. We all share a common goal. And the thought that we're all sharing that goal with the rest of the world, we're aligning with so many bigger, I wouldn't say bigger, but just so many similar projects, such as China spending over $360 billion on their renewable energy program, a leader in the world at this time. Elon Musk, his reusable Falcon 9 Heavy, you guys all saw that. It goes up, delivers its payload, it comes back down, ready for action again, saving time and cost significantly for our space program. I think we're doing just the same thing, reducing in waste as we do. So I would like to, that's exactly how we're going. So a little history about Hans Dairy from what wasn't covered is, we are a second generation dairy that's been running for over 20 years. We specialize in the South Asian flavor profile. And, just recently, about 3 years ago, we moved from a 7,000 square foot facility to a 25,000 square foot facility, which definitely, gets us in the ballpark, in the right size ballpark to do this sort of study, at that point. So, just moving from a smaller facility to a larger facility is a task in itself. I mean, coming into a facility, ripping out flooring, creating envelopes and creating necessary buildings that the food agencies or what other agencies require you to have, technologies. We knew that we wanted to make this expansion, and we thought, okay, you know what? We are going to use the leading technologies to make our envelope. For example, metal insulated panels, ISO panels, Kingspan, taking a regular R value of R15 to an R50. Right, you can't go wrong with that. It's a one-step shop. It's a stop. They just put the wall up. You don't have to paint it. It's washed down. It is just the right thing to do rather than drywall and bacteria coating paint. So we utilize the technology of that. Plus, our roofing technology is a special white roof TPO technology, which has been established in Europe for over 60 years. Very energy efficient. We took advantage of that, right? And so at the same time, we're going to take advantage of what Provision Collisions and the food loss program has available to us. So, aligned with Elon Musk is, provisions with their solutions to the real world effect of food loss, not just about the cost. It's about the environment, our footprint. That's really important, that really inspires us, right? And then also we have Enviro students with their highly technical evaluations and studies. They bring a proven team of professionals with fresh eyes, because I know my industry better, but I've been looking at it for the same time, and my eyes are just crisscrossed. You get some fresh eyes in there that know what they're doing. They're like, well, did you check that out? I know I saw that, but did you check this? That's great, because I'm busy fixing this or running that or buying this or fixing that, right? So I really appreciate Provisions and Enviro Stewards. So to go into detail about what Enviro Stewards did help us do is what we're all here for. Now, they were able to come in and watch our process and diagnose key areas where it would be easy to miss that slide. You can see the rockets there, and China. That's China. They're going to get a lot better from now on. Don't worry about it. And so this is it. We need to identify our need, because no joke, I look like this guy when they came in and saw all the milk being hosed into a drain, the closest drain. We've got to identify our needs. We need to know where we're wasting, why we're wasting, what can be done, how can it be done, and when do we do it. Simple as that. And once you get the three answers first, you figure out the when and the how and the cost yourself. And that's, you need to just be pointed in the right direction. Right now, we've got blinders on. We're working to sell product, to increase quality, to expand our product base. But, it's what we leave behind. It's what's spilt on the floor that we should be concentrating on once we get the proper resources and assistance from companies like Provisions and Enviro Students. So Enviros was able to come in and immediately say, hey, okay, look, there's milk on the ground. Let's figure out why that happens. There's milk on the ground over here, and there's milk on the ground over there. What are these 3 or 4 or whatever? What are these processes that are causing this? How much are you losing? Why are you losing it? What can we do to reduce it? Where can we reduce the loss? And if the loss is inevitable or uncircumstantial, where can we reuse it if possible? And they were able to come in and give us those, quantify the certain areas that we were losing or wasting product, and giving us suggestions saying, listen, you have. Well, I guess the biggest, best way to put it is, I'll give you a little idea. You got milk in the line. We're processed. We're done. We want to clean our lines. We've got good milk in a long length of lines, 2 inches deep. There's a quantity there. There's liters. There's a volume there. Now, what we do is we have a 5-stage CIP process, and the first one is a mechanical flush, just using water. Just push that milk out. Now, when you do that, that milk and that water is going to commingle. It's going to mix. Right, and there's some products we can actually use a mixture of milk and water for, and then there's others we cannot. So now it's like, okay, well, how much of it do you do per process, per SKU? Am I running this line? How much am I pushing water mixed? They measured, they came in, they quantified that, they added it up per week, then they added it up per year, and they gave us an annual volume, a cost to that, and then also worked with us to come up with a permanent solution, a temporary solution. But either way, we could start saving money, with a 0.2 rate of return, or go even longer and add pumps and fixturing and go on for the future pace. But another thing they really did teach us is how we overreach. It's plant design as well. Sometimes, listen, I can only put this here, but that means I'm going to need this much real estate to bring all my product this way. There's got to be a better way, because overall, if you're going to be using waste or cleaning this much lines, you want to reduce those lines as much as possible. So not only do we want to recoup what we lose now that everything's in place, but in the future it gives us ideas to think about when we're redesigning, when we're expanding onto what the causes are of loss, right? So that's it's not only addressing the problem, quantifying the problem, but it's also teaching you rules and examples of how to redesign the next time we go through this movement or plant phase, right? Just because it's so convenient to put it here doesn't mean that's always going to be the fact. Don't think about now. Think about the immediate future. How much you're going to waste because you thought this was the best place to put this equipment and then tap it into where you needed to. Tear a hole in the wall. Tear a hole in the ceiling. Bring the silo in. It sounds like a lot, but in the long run, it saves everybody's time and efficiency. So the next step after getting reviewed and getting a feedback from Enviro Stewards, from Provision Collisions, setting your examples, they gave us some good feedback and previous experience on how they resolved these problems in the past. You want to think, okay, what are my next steps, right? And as much as we'd like to incorporate everything that all these saving characteristics. I mean, you can see that the first graph is our main recovery lines, and then they segregate from different SKUs, right? The point is that is the dollar amount of what is being flushed down the drain. I mean, it's bad enough we have to pay to make it. Then we have to pay to dispose of it. And it's not just the material. It's not the milk. It's the ink, the plastic, the truck drivers, the grass, the cows, it's all of that, right? I pay for the milk. And the milk has all that price included in it. So you don't see that breakdown. But it is true. There's a lot more than just the dairy footprint. There's also the transportation, the environmental footprint that's involved with that. So they were able to identify quite a bit of savings and quite a bit of lines. Now, they were able to give us an idea of technologies that we could use, right? So the next steps are looking into those technologies. Spring-loaded vessels in your pipes that separate the water from the milk. And as it pushes, there's never a water-milk ratio, or very little. There's never 100%, but there's very little. So now I can use all of that push as a milk, and I can put that away. And I know I don't have to measure how much water it's in there, or what kind of quality of percentages of ratios of milk to water there is. Other technologies are designing things differently. Like I was just saying, put things closer to where they're going to be used rather than piping, rather than stainless steeling, because you save time and money here, but over the long run, you almost break even quicker than you think you would. And then also there's also like assessing the qualities of the proposals. You can't just, oh, that's a great idea, let's try this, and then put it out in the market, and then people, this is not as consistent as I thought it would be, right? So we're gonna look into that as well. That's the one major question is, okay, so Enviro Stewards has come in, Provisions has helped you. What have you done? Now, again, they haven't come that long ago. It's only been a couple months, right? But there's a lot of things to consider. I mean, we'd love to jump on what is considered to save us money, and let's do it now rather than later, like Bruce said, because if you can prevent it rather than treat it, that's the ideal version. But we're at that, I'd like to say sweet spot, but sweet is not the word, but we're not too big, not too small, where everything is just, we have to pay for it right now. So once we get, because for example, the water-milk ratio that we recover from our wash lines can only be used for a specific SKU. And right now, for us, that volume isn't as high as we'd like to. So, and then of course the milk has to be stored in cooler space. Now there's not a lot of, there's a limited resource for refrigeration. You can store stuff outside all you want, but if you gotta have it cold, there's only so much room in your fridge. So, if we have a SKU that can use this recovery once a week, to quarantine that, or to make sure, or to even store it in a limited space right now isn't feasible. But this is exactly what we're going to be. This is exactly why we did this, because A, the government was able to fund it. B, Provisions was very professional about it, and of course, Enviro Stewards were equally as professional. So we jumped on it, and I wish we could, definitely take advantage of it now. But we definitely have plans to take advantage. Well, we know we got it in set, and so don't call me, I'll call you. But and when I call you, you'll know that we're ready to go, right? Because we have the space, and the environment, and the tech, and the willingness, right? And the volume. That's all it is. If we sell, we can save. If we save, we'll sell more, right? So that's that.
Thank you, Keaton. Any questions about the Hans Dairy experience? We certainly have enjoyed working with them. So what I want to do now is open the floor up to sort of a formal Q&A, an opportunity for everyone in the room to express any final questions, and then we will move into sort of the sign-up option. So are there any questions coming in? Oh, actually, here we go.
Spencer Kendall from Bonduel. In terms of the January 3rd, 2019 cutoff for implementation, is that for all action items that come up as a result of the assessment?
No, so the January 3rd deadline is all of the requirements within the program. So let me see if I think I've got a... So that was the complete the assessment. It's complete all of the questionnaires. So the background questionnaire, the food loss and waste, it's the employee engagement, it's the consider the case study, it's the evaluation. That's what has to be done by January 3rd. The actual food loss and waste assessment takes about 3 to 4 months. And so we've got plenty of time. It's just that we want you to know that that is a drop dead date and that we have to have all of the program pieces done by then. Yeah.
The question is, can you sign up more than one facility per company?
Great question. I should have mentioned this. Absolutely. It is first come, first serve. If it is a site-specific facility and it meets all of the requirements, those facilities are all welcome. So there's no limitations to the number of facilities within a specific company. Our goal is to get 50. How we get it doesn't matter. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none, we will move into the more informal part of the sign-up option. And so what we're going to do for the live stream is, if you are interested in participating, you can do one of two things. You can indicate your intent to participate. You can say your name, your organization, your contact information, and the number of employees, or you can email info@provisioncoalition.com and say that you were in the live stream and that you want to secure that spot for the next few weeks. As I said earlier, once you receive the MOU, which is just being finalized by the lawyers, once you receive it, you'll have 2 weeks from that date to make a decision about whether or not you want to participate in the program. For those of you who are in person, Angela is at the back of the room, I believe. Is Angela at the back of the room? Oh, she's over here. So Angela also has a database, so you can express your interest to Angela, and we'll do the same thing. We'll hold that spot for 2 weeks from the date that you receive the MOU. And I think I've said it several times, it will be first come, first serve. So as you sign the MOU, you'll be moved into the program, and that spot is yours. Okay. All right. So in the room, we also have Marcy Lillard. She can answer questions, so you can just put a hand up. You're welcome to ask me questions, Krystle questions, and Bruce questions about the actual assessment. And we'll close off the formal portion. Thank you all for participating, and we will just answer questions for you. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you again to FCPC for hosting.